Welcome back to the Lost Info Podcast. As always, it's keeping you awake, Jake.
What was it? Still believing?
Believing Steven.
I got nothing for this one.
We're still working on the name.
Still working on it.
You guys haven't weighed in yet, so the Lost Info Podcast at gmail.com. Let us know what you think. This case file, we're going to recap on Blue Beam and kind of finish it up since it was only touched on with Gordo. I hope you guys really enjoyed that show. It was fun for us. We are going to do another one with him again sometime soon. He had a good time. So we thank you for listening to that, and all the response and support that we got. It was awesome. By the way, if you go and watch us on YouTube, just subscribe and like. It helps us out a ton. Or go to Apple iTunes or Spotify and do a 5-star rating. That jumps us up the charts a little bit and it helps us out. That if that's at the least that you can do, that'd be great. And then, like I said, as we get going, we're still setting up the website where we'll have a store and you can get, we're basically be an affiliate of whatever you want to get. So if you want to help the store, just you want something certain, like a health product or a digital download of a book or whatever else, just go to our store and see if we have it first, get it through us, and it helps the show out. So. So with this one, case file Project Blue Beam, we will just break right into this bad boy. I think you got anything else?
Oh, I got nothing so far. Just where to start, really.
Okay. Yeah, where to start. That's the thing. So Project Blue Beam is really, as we had said, it's kind of like a four-step project, I guess. I think there's more to it, but I mean, it's
basically breaks down into 4 steps.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, it easily breaks down into 4, but I mean, there's more branches as you look into it. Like,
as it goes on. I mean, but step 1, they basically break it down to archaeological knowledge after faking earthquakes, which at this point, like I said, I looked into it. I don't believe they're gonna fake those earthquakes. Not at all.
No. So again, it's a multiple part project. They really break it down into 4. But before we get into those 4, they have these things in place. I mean, if you look at, and we'll just break this down. So like when we're talking about the stages, there's like different things that they want to accomplish that go into basically controlling everybody's belief system. And really, if you look at human beings and we look at religion from beforehand, in any kind of religion, it's really, if you can control their belief system, you can really get them to do whatever you want. And then if you have them in a society where there's, let's say, if it's moving towards the New World Order, which I think that's kind of what this indicates.
Definitely the main goal.
Is what they're going to the New World Order, then they want everybody to be controlled in a one governed society that has one belief system so that everybody in their eyes is on the same page working for their agendas. And I think it's really more or less, to break you down on your uniqueness and things like that too, because if you take away everything that kind of builds you up different than anybody else and you're kind of the same, it's going to be
free thinking. Once they take that away from you, what do I mean?
Well, for them, I see it. I see why, because if you have a lot of free thinkers, you're going to have people like me, and you're going to have people, Joe Rogan, Greg Carlwood, Gordo. You're going to have all these people that are going against the narrative, and that's only going to make your job harder to control people.
It creates more of a unity of free thinkers.
Yeah.
They don't want that. They despise it.
They definitely just want one kind of like robot type person, like do your job, whatever that may be. Yeah. Go home, don't question what we do or what we think, and then just go about things. That's why the religion part too. I mean, if they can convince you that, and that's what I thought would be the hardest, really. I thought, like, getting people to go against their religion would have been the thing that I thought, that's never going to happen. But the way that you read into it,
it's how they establish it. I mean,
you're not going to
be going against. They took advantage of the 50-50. Some of you are going to believe and some of you are going to question it. And that's the beauty of it, of this control method. It's going to work. They're going to, 50% of you are going to be like, oh, this.
Well, I think,
really
I was going to say the 50-50. I thought that too until I started looking into it. And I think really they're just going to manipulate the other religions to where it's not that they're going to say your religion's wrong. It's just going to be like, oh, they didn't add that this was the main guy. So like when you have And that's another thing. You're not even supposed to see Allah's face, so I don't know how the projection in the sky is going to work for them. But on the Muslim, you're going to have that, and then you have Jesus, then you have everybody else, and it's going to basically be like, oh, this all was one religion. We just the mankind split it up, and they're gonna
really
deceive you in that way to where, yeah, that half is already going to just be merge into one, and then there's going to be the ones that like, oh, this is the new religion coming down.
Yes.
They're all going to merge, and then the non-believers, I don't know. I think they'll just end up phasing people out like that.
Well, before the technological side of Project Bluebeam, you kind of see it in religion. It's they were several different religions, like you said, broke down by man, but as we look, and it's the same story being repeated over and over. It's the same deities, the same general idea.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, like, if you look into some of the stuff that we have like available now, and as far as technology wise, is that, I mean, you do have 5 towers with these microwave repeaters that can send massive amounts of information from point to point in around the world now. And then you have nanotechnology, which is it's not a science fiction anymore. It's real, controlled microbiology.
Well, at the same time, did you see the they talk about psychotronic weapons, and did you see the, what is it, the supernatural, or I don't know, the paranormal activity advertisement billboard?
No.
You walk in this area, and then it's basically beamed right into your head. You'd really have to look into it. It'd blow your mind.
Well, and that's the thing that, I mean, honestly, I'm more of an outside the box thinker than a lot. So even back then, like, I was coming up with some of the technology they're making now. I had things drawn about metaverse and a dream machine, which is basically just takes your dreams, puts you into some kind of virtual reality, and then a suit that has sensors, whatever. I was thinking of that shit way before. Like, it's not, and the thing is, it's not crazy because they're like any technology that the regular public can think of. They're at least 50 years more advanced than that.
That's the
So
thing, if looking into Bluebeam and people that have been basically writing about it and not writing about it, I mean, if you wanted an example, we could go back to the Wizard of Oz. Okay, I mean, look at the great and powerful Oz. He's this giant projection and smoke.
That's
Yeah, and
Bluebeam.
he's behind a curtain, and I'm the great powerful Oz. And then when you go back there, it's just some little dude behind a control panel. I mean, that's really all it was.
Actually, that pretty much describes Bluebeam in a nutshell.
Yeah,
maybe
basically.
Maybe that was part of how they leak it out when they do it in entertainment, because that kind of shows you what Bluebeam is. You're like, oh my gosh, you're all amazed by this massive screen of something that you see, because seeing is believing.
Right.
And then, then they pull that curtain back and you're like, what? That's it?
Yeah, it's basically Alice in Wonderland in a nutshell.
Yeah. So yeah, I could see that. I mean, we have, and then again, on some of the other things that we have MK Ultra, the studies of the mind and how to manipulate it, how to control it. I mean, that was also a conspiracy until it wasn't, until people found out that that was truth, and they were doing that. And they've been doing that for a long time. And I think they were doing that long before, maybe not MK Ultra. It wasn't the same program, but mind manipulation all the way back from maybe the 1500s, like even probably before that, but just in ways that you can, manipulate people to do what you want. And I mean, really, if you think about it, that's essentially every kingdom, religion, empire. That's exactly what they want to do. Is they want you not to go against them or to question them, but to work for them and do their agendas, because they feel that they're the chosen ones, the royal family, the elites, the Jesuits, the Illuminati. They all feel like they're gods, and they deserve to do the plans, and then the rest just,
and that's
play
written
'em out.
in the 4-step program here. I mean, it says step 1 requires the breakdown of all archaeological knowledge. This will apparently be accomplished by faking earthquakes at precise locations around the planet. Fake new discoveries at these locations will finally explain to all people the error of all fundamental religion doctrines, specifically Christian and Muslim doctrines. Basically, they're looking to disprove it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So they had said that there was going to be earthquakes in places that there normally wouldn't be earthquakes. And basically, I mean, from what I'm getting is that they're going to break open a piece of land, or some hills going to slide off,
No, actually,
and emerge like a temple or something, and they'll be like, oh, look at this. And what that's going to do Yeah, and that's what I was thinking. Like the hill's gonna slide off. You're gonna find some temple. They're gonna be like, "Oh, look at this! Couldn't believe this has been since 50,000 years ago, way before written religion. Oh, this is what this means." And here, these scribes indicate that this religion was only one piece of the religion, and then kind of start to crumble your view on your current religion so that they can build back the one that was here first. And
Well,
that's kind of what I saw.
looking into earthquakes that could they say they'd be faked, which I don't believe that. I did a little bit of digging and did some research, and what I found is they basically can control this aspect of earthquakes through the waterways because we've built several dams, and it says when we built the Hoover Dam alone that there was a massive change in stress load, and we experienced hundreds of quakes as Lake Mead was
I was
feeling.
going to say,
So,
even fracking. I mean, fracking is one of those things that we're pumping massive amounts of water down to like push these rocks apart and whatever else. I
Yeah.
mean, that's all gonna,
mining
Yeah.
operations, the more we pull out,
Yeah.
this changes the level of the weight differential on these.
but I think these
plates.
ones are going to be more like energy weapons where they're just going to be able to like point and maybe use partly
Maybe.
harp and whatever else, but they're just going to be able to like, hey, we're going to need it in this location because let's say this is where, religion stemmed from and all this and that. And then they're just
I
gonna,
don't think it'd be hard to do it with, well, because what we've learned is they've built these another way is to build towers on specific points of plates. And at the same time, you take
Yeah.
the weight of that tower, you adjust some water through some waterways, which we've created a dam system. We control the entire water grid. It wouldn't be hard. You move a couple things in a day, you get storms, you get the earthquake. It gives you the desired effect that they're looking for.
Yeah. And that's what I think they're going to do is just pick certain points on our globe or flat earth or whatever you want to believe, but they're going to pick certain points that were origins of something certain so that they can say, hey, this is where it all started. And then, we got our break off religions, and then they'll try to merge them all back into one. And then they're going to use technology to also convert that later on. But I think in the very first stage, like you had said, the earthquake system is going to just basically pick points of origin and then kind of reveal things that they want to be revealed. And it's kind of like, in the just like Gordo had said, the movie the Tomorrow War with Christopher Pratt, like, it took them all the time after fighting and traveling back in time and whatever else that they had to go back to the original timeline and then go and find this thing buried in the ice. And then that, came true to their current situation, whatever else. So it was, it's just kind of one of those things that, I could see how they would do it and how they'd use it to manipulate is that, they create these earthquakes, reveal things or reveal things. I shouldn't say reveal things because it wasn't probably ever there in the first place. Well, who knows? I mean, and that's the confusing part is there's going to be a lot of people that are going to question things, even me, but I mean, I'm going to have to, I always question them.
We know that through time, our government, one of many,
I was going to say ours alone.
they collect several artifacts and they put them into these storage units. They never actually document the fact that they've collected them. We just know that they're in specific locations around the world collecting these artifacts, and then they put them away. And obviously now we know what for, but
yeah, I was going to say
questionable.
The Smithsonian, I mean, all the stuff they don't let you see. And that's another thing is so like if this does come to be true, and all of a sudden we see these earthquakes and then they reveal what they find in there right away, that'll be a first indicator that something's a lie because they never show anything that so if the lost info in general, I mean, if you think about archaeology and like, the stories of giants and they found these skulls and you hear these stories about that stuff, they literally do not show you anything and they hide it. So if they're willing to show you right off the bat, that should be a good indication that you should question it.
And I was
in the first place.
I was just watching videos on the giants the other day, the discoveries of the bones and whatnot. And I was thinking, did they find this before the dinosaurs and lock that evidence away? Because it's like, how did we find the dinosaurs before the giants? Or were
there's stories of well, I mean, we even had somebody on that was talking about that they had worked with the Smithsonian can't remember what episode, but they had said there's tons of stuff that they've never let anybody see. And so the crazy thing to me is that how these secrets have lasted and been kept this long. But
It's when they make these discoveries, the quicker they present it to the public, the quicker we can put it together in a timeline. And when this information is not, applied directly when it's found, and it needs to be given right away so we can apply a timeline and put it together. You deliver
Well,
it
yeah.
late, and then we start having to jumble around.
But that's what they want, is that
I know, and
if we can't establish a timeline, then they get to kind of direct how things flow.
and that's
Actually, and that'll be like in this first stage, it'll be so that they can establish when the first timeline of, let's say, the one true religion, so that they can, run this blue beam out. If they can't control the timelines or the information, then obviously the truth would came out and we would be in a lot different place. But since that's what they do, that's like their main thing.
what's scary is
They control
the Bible alone. Basically, it narrates what we're talking about almost within Revelation alone, where that this will come to fruition.
I was going to say, I think they're going to use that too.
See, and that's what I'm saying. I mean, it goes to show that something like this could have been put together in a time where we wouldn't even have been thinking about looking at it. I mean,
yeah, I think a couple, before we get into everything in there, I think a couple things to look out for that would probably indicate that this is more coming to be truth than a conspiracy would be the digital currency, trying to move everybody's currency into one currency.
eliminating
Yeah.
cash flow.
And so that you can get to a point. And then I just saw another thing that, the State of Union address was on last night, and they were talking about the majority of the countries coming to the same conclusion on the same thing they want to do for economies, or create their economies the same way. That also sounded to me like, all right, we're moving towards a one world order where everybody is moving in the same direction, and the same kind of economies would indicate a new world order. But so look out for that. And everybody kind of moving in one direction on countries. I know there's a lot going on right now, so it's kind of very confusing when you got Russia and the Ukraine thing, and you have all these other countries talking about they want to step it up a notch because they don't want to get taken over. Finland and Sweden and Switzerland's talking about backing anybody, and Switzerland, fuck, they haven't even been in a war. So it's like, if they're jumping in, that's already weird. You have China sitting back in the shadows, kind of deciding which side they're going to take.
And with technology where it is today, it's just weird that we would want to go to war with anybody right now. I mean,
And I don't think they do. I mean, if you look into the
power play, that's all it was.
And it looks to be more, to me, it looks to be more planned. I mean, if you look at, I forgot what the global leaders, youth global leaders or whatever, it was on the Economic Forum, World Forum or something. If you go and look at that school, it's like WEF or something. I don't know. But you look it up. It's like Youth Leaders of the Globe or whatever. But anyway, the people that are involved in this, like, it becomes kind of like, what the hell? This isn't random. You got Bill Gates in there, you have Bezos in there, you have Zuckerberg, you have all the media, you have all the prime ministers and presidents, you have, I mean, the list goes on, and you're looking down
Right in line with what
and
we're
it's
talking
like,
about.
holy
This is a
shit, man,
time
everybody's on the
process.
same page, doing the same. Vladimir Putin went to this school. So like everybody, he was on like the alumni of 2005 or something. So it's like everybody's, I think this plan, it's more of a planned operation, and the fear tactic in war is more easy to convince the world to fall in line. So it's, to me, it's like, I got to question everything. So like, I don't know what's going on. In the beginning, I was like, fuck, I can't believe Putin's going to, talk about throwing nuclear weapons on the table and all this and that. And I fell right into it. And I'm one that always questions. And that, as of last Thursday, I was like, oh, great, here we go. Everybody's getting crazy. Then I started thinking about it. I'm like, but this would make sense if you're trying to scare everybody into thinking that everybody's gone crazy and they all want to go to war. Because if you think about it, we did the same thing Putin did. We also claimed weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. We did it, and that shit went on for 20 years. So it's like,
And we never actually found weapons. of mass
yeah.
destruction.
So it's like,
Not a one of them.
you gotta, first of all, you can't get your emotions jumped into it too quick. You have to take a step back, start looking at things, and then decide whether, this is something that is just spontaneous and random, or that we've been on great terms with Russia for a really long time. And then all of a sudden Putin decides to go wacko, like all just on a drop of a dime. Like, I don't, I don't
It's
think
really
so.
scary. Like I said, given the time of in advancements of technology, science, and now these
Yeah,
guys want to go to
there's
war.
something
Given
going
this,
on. Obviously, I mean, and it could be, Putin does want Ukraine back, and that, I guess, that kind of turmoil has been happening since 2014 when he first started. But that's beside the point. Like him to just drop down and talk about nukes are on the table, everything else. I don't know.
it's senseless. If you
Yeah, I don't.
honestly,
And
there's
then,
no need
he's
for it.
getting older, so I mean, he could be trying to fulfill some of the things that he thinks that should be done. I don't know, but again, before you throw everything in on the table, take a step back, determine what's going on. Don't get overwhelmed. I did. I was like, oh crap, here we go. And I was out with my stepdad and everything else, and we were all getting it all hyped up, talking about who should do what and what we should do. And I was like, this is how it starts, man. You're creating that fear and you're creating that panic. And then people start to make rash decisions and back our government on whatever we want to do. I mean, even the State of Union talk, the shit that he was promising, like they all do, they never come through with half those promises, but they sure had people chanting USA, US. I'm like, hey, this is the thing, is that patriotism. And I like that. I mean, that you spark a fire, but it should be for things that we can actually get done together.
Positive,
And
positive, man.
and it's usually just for their agendas and war and whatever else. And it starts to piss me off because it's like, I don't agree with war at all. So I mean, you can hate me or if you want and say wars were necessary, but I don't think any of them were, to be honest with you. I think that there was other ways that it could have been done. I mean, Hitler and everything else. Yeah. But I mean, I don't know. I think they also were pushed in that direction. And if you look at everything in history and current, these wars are spiked off on things that are avoidable. And I mean, when we proclaim false flags and we proclaim weapons of mass destruction and we do that, or we let attacks happen in order to retaliate, like there's other things, man. And I don't know. I think that for us to become a type 1 civilization or further, 2, 3, 4, we have to get past this war. We have to get past hating each other and believe in our government system. Like we have to.
That's sad. We're not even a type.
I mean, these governments really, it falls on fabricated lines of property, and that separates me from the next guy and our beliefs and what we should do with our economy and how we should live and what makes you successful, what makes you a good person. If you work 40 hours a week and you have tons of money and all, you're better than the guy that prays and doesn't work. And just it's kind of a thing. It's like, who you proving? Are you proving it to other people? Or are you proving who you are to yourself and your God? And I don't think you need any of, things in the sky. I don't think you need churches. I don't think you need anything. You should know what you provide to your family and the people around you. And I think that can be decided. You don't have to say, hey, I made $1 million, so I'm a good person, I'm successful and all that. It's just validation is really on yourself. So
you have to see though that religion is important in the aspect that it was history at one time and it still is, and we've lost actually a lot of good history that is no longer commonly.
I think religion's good. I just don't think organized religion.
No, okay, I can understand that. Yeah,
but I think praising your God and everything's great. I think people getting together for one topic, like putting their prayers together, and which we might do when we get live. We might actually do a segment, which is kind of like a ritual where we all, everybody in there, we might kind of pick people that have something that they might want to pray for, like a loved one in cancer, going through cancer, something like that, and then we all put our prayers in together and kind of work that, because I think there is a ritual spiritual magic that if you kind of link everybody's conscious on one thought or idea, that it does help more than just one person's thought or idea or prayer. So I do believe in religion. I just don't believe in organized religion because they've corrupted it. I mean, that we've proved that many times in all different kinds of things, not even just on this show, but I mean, in the world, organized religion just leads to corruption whenever you give somebody that much power. So, I mean, that's just kind of what it comes down to. But I think I was just trying to say, when you get to, if we ever get to this point where Project Bluebeam really becomes a thing and you see things in the sky and whatever else and voices in your head, you got to just follow pretty much your heart, man, what you think and what to be true, and if this just doesn't seem real, then you might have to question it. And I don't think, even if there was a second coming, I don't think God would ever punish somebody for questioning whether they should go all in, depending on
At the same time,
what they're asking of you.
we've
So,
seen, and that's the thing with this blue beam. We've seen aspects of it well before technology
yeah.
has really peaked. You can find stories in biblical history. The story of Jesus alone, Gabriel coming to his mother, explaining what she would go through, and then it coming to fruition, which is basically a controlled aspect of it, and Jesus disappearing into a cave and going through something spiritual and finding out, quote unquote, he's the son of God.
Well, that's another thing. I mean, even so a lot of the books, like even the book of Enoch, the one they took out,
Yes, the Book of Watchers.
and I mean, he's
Heavily
the only one that
described.
really describes him being at the foot of God and whatever else, or whatever God is. The other ones, Jesus's disciples and whatever else, and Moses, like nobody ever has a story
Oh,
of,
even Moses, you're right.
yeah,
Burning
yeah,
bush.
burning bush, the lightning that struck the rock, whatever, and he got the whatever commandments.
Well, and you got to think though, if it and most of what this blue beam is, looking at the attention span, how much sleep an average American gets, well, an average human, delirium comes to mind because after so much stress on you and so much delirium, you start to see like shadows and such things like that. So through enough of this stress, you can start to see what they want you to see. So when this happens, like I said, there's gonna be the 50-50. Half of you are gonna believe it because that's the way you were taught, as well as the stress of society put on you, and the other half, the exact opposite, the stress that's been put on
Well,
them.
and I think that plays into
Completely
what
not the
we're
way.
talking about with the war and everything else, because it's not going to just be this technology where you see something in the sky. There's going to be a lot of things to where the stress, I mean, there's going to be probably sleepless nights when you got war going on, or the thought of war going on everywhere around you, to where like you could be nuked at any moment. You have, maybe tidal waves, earthquakes going on, natural disasters.
If
You
you're
have
not, I'm sure
religious
that's what
wars,
they're
race wars. You have everything else going on. It's going to make you be like, hey, whoever comes and fix this, I'll take that option. So like if something came down, whether you could even, it doesn't even have, I honestly don't think it even have to be, something projected in the sky. But if there was war going on and food shortages and electrical outages and neighbors getting crazy, stealing from neighbors to feed, fend for themselves and their family. Like if somebody came along and was like, hey, I'll flick the power back on, you'll have the internet back on, you'll have lights, you'll have food.
Oh, you'd fall in line.
Everybody be
instantly.
like, fine, I'll do it. Like, so I don't even think that they'd
Well,
need this, but
in America, we see though that with what you're saying, basically, in order for that to happen in our country, you're basically spot on. Earthquakes, weather differentials. You're talking about basically they'd have to cause a civil war over here just to cause
well,
chaos.
and that's the thing. I think if they cause chaos anywhere, like I said, once you get to especially Americans, we're too spoiled. So
That's what
like
I'm saying. We're a
if
hard-headed
if
country.
our internet and everything went out and somebody was like, hey, I'll flick the internet back on if you guys just believe in this religion and do one world government, we'd be like, yeah, sure, all right, cool.
Maybe on one hand. On the other hand, I don't know. If something like that were to happen, it might strengthen us. But if they came in here with arms and took all that away, then it changes the entire
I think
game plan.
actually I think it's the opposite personally, because I think if you come in here with arms, America, then we'll be like, well, fuck you. We'll
Yeah,
fight
well, we'll
back.
we'll arm up. But as long as we have some kind
But
of
I think
form
if
of
it was just more
communication,
like on the lines of, hey, we'll flip the internet back on for
and
you,
that's been the biggest problem is
and let you go back to your life that you're used to, your spoiled life, people will be like, all right, sure, cool.
communication's entirely digital now. There's no
Yeah.
lines with it, and that'll be the downside. But to those that can still use radio tech, and can still, I believe, will still be in communication. So if communication lasts, maybe people will actually start to open their eyes in America. So
Well,
this could benefit them and work to this advantage of this one world government or new world order, or it could completely turn around and backfire in our country, and they basically have to start a war over here.
I was gonna say, I mean, I kind of thought a long time ago that they would turn the internet off, just because it kind of, I don't know if it hurts their idea or what, but I mean, like for the most part, there's a lot of information. If this was to be their plan, there's a lot of people now talking about it. So it's like,
At
you know,
first, it'd be
it wouldn't be so much a surprise to a lot of people like me. If I saw some shit like this now, I'd be like, well, damn, these motherfuckers are really projecting something in the sky. Even if it was real aliens, my first thought would be like, oh, this is blue beam. So
with what you were saying though, like if someone was to come back and be like, I'll flick the internet back on, I'll give you power, I'll give you food back. And one thing that comes to mind is we've heard, we've heard that maybe not the government is building their own spacecrafts, UFOs, whatever you want to call it. So, I
yeah.
mean, it's not too far fetched.
I was gonna say, I'm sure they've tested it. We've
Right.
seen some weird shit in the skies. So like if you go on, I mean, you can just go
create
on
the
to
alien invasion.
YouTube and look at some of this weird shit that, okay, whether CGI'd or not, that's kind of the shit that they're talking about. Like there's like this like squid looking thing in the
right.
sky I've seen before. There was one of like it looked like a portal opening up, and those all could be just, let's see how they react, because those could be just the testing phases of
we've seen these
blue beam.
phases with just seeing how the public reacts with things like Y2K.
Oh yeah, well I was gonna say those were all little prelims to this whole plan too, because
drip fed ideas that go into it. But you're right. If aliens, quote unquote, were to show up and
my first thought now would be it's Project Bluebeam.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. But then we know that the government's behind it at that point, because how would it turn out? Either the aliens just coincidentally
I was going to say they're going to
like us, or we don't ever see them, or how does that work?
I think that, I mean, I guess you could go either way with it, because they, how it was, I was brought to me in the beginning when I first looked in this, that Project Bluebeam was a staged alien attack. But now I think that they would go the other way and just have the UFOs and whatever else, but it would be the alien force or whatever else that was the new religion. And so it wouldn't be an attack as much as it'd be like, so it's very confusing to me now, because the way I always saw it was, if aliens wanted to hurt us, they would have done it long ago. So
I see no reason for it.
Yeah. So if an alien attack came, I wouldn't believe it anyway, because I'd be like, they had done this long ago until now. But now if I'm thinking on the other side, but I'm thinking on the other side, if the alien, whatever projection came down and it was on a good side, and they were saying, oh, this is the religion, or this is where your origins were from, and we're really your God, or whatever they're trying to do.
I think they'd be evolved way beyond that. I think they would come down to like gods and such. It's just asinine in their eyes. Probably they're like, I don't know where you guys, they would, for them to travel from one planet to another.
Well, no, but I'm just saying it's more believable for me to see a staged alien, like, we're here to help you, that rather than the alien attack. Because the alien attack, I just wouldn't believe it. But the we're here to help you, I'd be like, fuck, finally, where you guys been? We've been down here killing each other for fucking thousands of years.
It still seems like it would be government controlled. Like,
well, no,
we're not really seeing extraterrestrials.
I do too, but I
tend to be the extraterrestrials.
I don't know. I think that before I really knew about Bluebeam, I would have thought that either God or extraterrestrials would have came down and stopped this long ago. I mean, the sex trafficking is out of control. The wars are beyond out of control. Poverty's beyond out of control. It's like I don't even know if overpopulation becomes a thing as much, but I do, because I think we have plenty of land.
But we're definitely, but we'll give that another, given the population.
Oh, the where it's going. Yeah. I mean, the way that it's doubling. Yeah.
Is increasing with the lack of education.
Well, and the thing that we just destroy our resources rather than find a way to make them, last. Even like you using hemp instead of trees. Hemp grows back. You can still use it for rope, paper, all these other things, plastics, forks, whatever, boxes for to-go food. But instead we use styrofoam and all that. We could have been working on all this long ago, to where we had, hemp that grows back in 3 months. You can harvest a whole new crop. But instead
same direction with all the energy we waste.
Yeah. Instead we just tear down forests that have been there for hundreds of years, thousands of years, and then it would take forever to regrow.
There's no need for that. That's like all these mining operations. Now energy is so free and renewable that,
well, I was going to say 0 point energy is the same thing as, us using fossil fuels.
And there's no need for it at this point.
Yeah. Well, there is. It's to make these industries and empires completely rich as possible.
That's about the only need that they have for it. But, we're taking from our one Earth. I mean, there's nothing that's coming down here and replenishing all.
Well, I was going to say that's what the
biggest scare of it all.
That's what they want, is to use it completely all the way out.
Well, they want to leave us, limited to their power and their will. And,
absolutely.
And it's up to us, really. It's up to the people to come together and against this and stand up and say, hey, we don't need this. But I just don't know how well that's going to work out.
Yeah, we would have had to do that quite a long time ago. I think now it's going to be harder. Not that it's impossible, but it's definitely going to be harder now than it ever was.
We're so reliant on not only the government, but technology. I mean, look how much time the average American probably spends on their phone, in front of their television, instead of actually.
I'm guilty of it.
Right. Instead of actually communicating with one another, going outside, spending time.
Oh, I do. I try to
in the
communicate too.
environment.
The one thing I don't like is when you go to dinner with a lot of people, or even like with
See, and
one
that's-
person, and somebody just keeps looking at their phone or is on their phone
Yeah.
the whole time while you're just trying to have just a regular conversation.
Phone's
you,
off
well,
in your
I was
pocket,
gonna
put it
say
in the
like the
car.
old times, but that makes me sound old shit. But that's what I mean. Like,
No, that's really what it was. You
Yeah.
know, we gather at dinner, and it was a group, and it was amassing for what's going on in your daily life, keeping you social. Nowadays, it's their entire agenda is to keep you locked away from one another. Even in your homes, you're isolated. You're in separate rooms. You're playing on your devices. There's not a lot of communication going on, and much like you said, nowadays you get around a dinner table, if that's a thing that's in your home, everybody's on their damn cell phones or on their laptops, or it's all business.
well, and that's the thing is if
no
they
family.
put devices, which they say that leads into Bluebeam too. If they put devices in all this technology, then I mean they pretty much got us, because like again, we spent so much time on it. If there was devices that helped this project flourish into what it's supposed to be, like these little nanotechnologies in your phone, and being able to, when they flip the switch, send these voices into your head and whatever else, like I mean they're pretty much there.
In one of the steps it talks about.
Well, before we get into the steps, hold on, I was
okay.
going to say, if you guys want to look it up yourself, pound search it. 1994, his name was Serge Monest, or
Sergey Manis, I believe is what it is,
or pronounced that way,
Yeah.
whatever way you want to pronounce it. Pound search that
pronunciation.
guy, and he's the one that kind of put these documents forward. And then at the time, I mean, he was like, everybody was like, wow, that's that's a step above conspiracy. Like he's out there on the crazy
I
level.
want to go on to say the leading expert.
Yeah,
in the
well,
field.
and then it's
One of.
now you fast forward, you're like, okay, maybe this guy wasn't so crazy, because now a lot of it's possible and a lot of it looks more realistic than when 1994, when you were
That's the
saying
thing.
this.
They talk about it being supernatural in one of these steps, and that's kind of one of the points I've been trying to point out here, is at one point this
Well, and
was
that's another
spiritual
thing
and
that I thought was
biblical.
weird, is that it was the Canadian government. So I don't think they were as good at like the dirty shit that maybe the CIA might do. So this Serge Monest's daughter was kidnapped, and they had basically, from the understanding I got, you can look it up, but was that you need to shut your mouth about what you're talking about, and then we'll give your daughter back, or something of that nature. I don't even know if they ever returned the daughter. I just know that he ended up dying a little after that. He ended up dying in a suspicious way, a heart attack or something like that.
Yeah, I can't.
Suspicious.
I don't remember
I think it was a suspicious heart attack, but then that was at the time when they just talked about having this heart attack gun. So it's
Yeah,
like,
I don't remember reading the part about his daughter being kidnapped.
Yeah, and that actually was documented. His daughter was kidnapped by the Canadian government or something. Is what was said. You have to pound search it for yourself.
I know it says here, born 45, died December 5th in 96, age 51.
Yeah, and it was a little after that he released this, that the daughter was basically held ransomed for him to shut his mouth.
And then his is most. It says most of his is stories that reflect supernatural side of Bluebeam before the technological advancements. Which, again, this goes back as far as.
Yeah,
as
I mean that's why I
Bible.
said this guy was looked at like a crazy man, but now, like with the technological advancements, you're like, oh, well, this doesn't sound as crazy now.
But if we take, and the worst part is, if we take this back, we'll go to like the 1940s, 1950s. If this had been presented, people would have seen the more spiritual, religious side of it, and it wouldn't have been as questionable. But he was right there in that gap between the fall of religion, and I don't want to call it.
Yeah, I know. And the thing with like sci-fi and like adding all this stuff that we weren't really involved in yet. Like if you look at anything in sci-fi, like that we're going to try to recreate it. We've done it. So it's like, even if you talk about like nanotechnology and like and these beams that can basically teleport somebody or bring it up. I mean, if you look into it, there's stories with the Marines, and there's some story about them teleporting people, and that got taken back. But if you go into, I don't remember what it's called, but it's like, it's a website that basically everything that's ever been put out, they keep. They don't ever take it back.
You can take it back to like you were saying, beaming people. Like, we'll go back to the original Star Trek series. If you were to tell someone back in that time, these things will be real one day. We'll have communicators. We'll have ships that will fly in the sky. People would have laughed at you. And then here we are today. We have our touch screen phones. You know,
Oh, yeah.
if you presented someone an iPhone in the 50s, they would have approached it with gloves and a helmet and locked that damn thing away for 30 years, and it would still be
Yeah. I mean, and
tested.
that's the thing is
And
like you talk about that stuff in sci-fi, and then it like, over time when we start developing technology, whether we got it from a down craft and back engineered a lot of fiber optics and circuit boards and whatever, either way, we were going to get there. And so now that we are there, there's really nothing that they're not going to try to accomplish. So if you know it's technology wise, something of teleportation, projection system in the sky, whatever, we're going to work on it if it's there to be worked on. And the thing is with this one in the sky, it's like, there's a lot of things that you look into. Chemtrails, they do have this particle that, and we'll get to that. I forgot what it's called, but
yeah,
Bermium
yeah,
nitrate or whatever used for 3D technology.
and
That's intent chemtrails to basically give you the backdrop
they've
in
been
your
putting
sky.
this in the air for years.
So it's like, okay, is that just coincidental? Is that one more just coincidental thing? I don't know, but so let's go down the steps. Let's go down to the steps here. So
just one more point on that though.
Yeah.
Remember that this whole thing is pointing towards, they say they're trying to develop the Antichrist or whatever, that they're trying to remove religion. And if you backstep into your whatever it is, your religious text of the Lord, we used to have a lot of communication with the Lord, which would be spirits, something of a supernatural nature. They're trying to remove that. So not only are they putting these chemtrails in the air, they put things like fluoride in the water. There's, the things that we ingest in our food. If you knew more about just opening your pineal gland alone, just to look at what's really going on around you, it would be mind-boggling. And now they want to replace it with technology.
Yeah, they want to remove that individual free will, everything that makes you unique, everything that makes you a truth seeker. All that stuff is, they want to take all that and just make you basically a mindless, emotionless drone. But we're going to go down the steps. So like we said, in step one, it requires a breakdown of archaeological knowledge.
Archaeological knowledge.
That's what I said. Words are hard. And so this will apparently be accomplished by fake earthquakes and precise locations around the world.
Which, look it up. I mean,
with new discoveries and everything else.
It doesn't look like it. It looks like they could really pull a lot of that off.
Yeah, the new discoveries and the earthquakes and whatever else to
we
can uncover new things.
We can control our waterways. We control drilling. We control mining operations. We can pump chemicals into the world that makes plates shift. We offset a lot of plates.
Yeah, I was going to say that part is like that first part is just like, I'm actually wondering why they didn't do that before, because they could pretty much create a narrative. If you created an earthquake and then you uncovered this newfound knowledge, you could literally convince half the world, if not 75%, on the first week of like, oh, this was the most ancient text we've ever had. And then somebody, deciphers it and says, blah, 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 this was this, and humans came from this, and everybody would buy in right away.
And if they did, depending on where it happened, depending on where it happens, lets us know that there's obviously some kind of shadowy world government, some kind of shadowy cabal in the background controlling things, because this would have to have been brought together by several different governments to work out to their greater advantage, which we've seen in the past that there's a lot of evidence that says,
like I said, that
we're all working
global
together.
Leaders or whatever with the World Forum,
they're working together against us.
They've all been in these schools working on this shit anyway, apparently. So it isn't crazy to think that everybody's working together, because they already have.
So the one world government, in my opinion, theoretically already exists. It's just more of getting an acceptance by the people.
I was going to say, I think it exists. It's more of like this facade and this like play that's going on to make everybody think that everybody's on edge and these governments are protecting their own. But really, like, it's like, hey, if you go along with this, you'll have a spot in this government, in this one world government, where we'll let you keep this region. You just have to go along with it. And so everybody's like, yeah, okay. Because I mean,
the new world order really
is
about accepting it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that, I mean, if the Rothschild banking system, they've been putting banking systems in every country. There's only 3 left that don't have it. So it's like, and
that's
prior to
also
2001. Yeah. And so you see these steps being carried out, but prior to 2001, there was 7. And then after 9/11 and we went to war, we knocked off 4 more of those countries with central
Well,
banking
you were talking
systems.
about the world banking system. So I was looking into it, and there's a letter from an Albert Pike letter to Mazzini, and he basically outlines the same steps of Project Bluebeam before Project Bluebeam. This was in real quick. Let's see.
Yeah, it becomes like
1871. He
yeah,
outlines all the wars and how they would go on to
that's even
want.
farther back than I would have thought. But yeah,
Yeah, and talks
well, I was
about
gonna
a
say that's
one world
before, you
banking
know,
system and
yeah, JP Morgan got in with the Federal Reserve doing all that crazy shit.
1871. That's
Yeah,
some
well, and that's
time.
the thing is like even they were saying a lot of these wars, they were pre-planned 20 years in advance in order for one more direction towards a plan. Now, if it's the overall arcing plan as the New World Order and Bluebeam's just like the final phase of that, like all to move towards one world order seems like that's been being played out
I'm
for a
telling you,
long, long time.
given what is so it's Ukraine and Russia, right?
Yeah.
So given where they are, if you look into that letter from Albert Pike, the letter to Mazzini, if you look into it, it physically covers that exact war. And it's happening now. And if you look into it, he basically discusses that this war would have to take place for what we're talking about, Project Bluebeam, to take place. The only way this one world government can work. And I found this in there. And again, the year 1871. I mean, this is, and
Well,
now
that's what I
that
was gonna
war is
say.
taking place today.
I was gonna
So
say
it's
the
pretty.
as far as Project Bluebeam being that on the last phase, but yeah, the project or the plan or whatever working towards a new world order has been being done for a long time.
It's just
Because
it's
I mean, if you look at the
scary to
Jesuits and
see
you
it.
look at all these wars that take place, all those moves would have had to been made for the Western world to take domination and start doing things
That's
with
what's so
with our
scary about it.
yeah, exactly, with our military having to act around the world, and especially in the Middle East, in order to get things done the way that we wanted. And again, destroy economies and slip in a central banking system and then kind of move out and say that or basically push democracy around
See, and that's why I
like
believe
Gordo
it.
said. But yeah, it really becomes like when you look into a lot of it, it just like you don't even have to look into the blue bean part. Just start looking into the overall plan of a new world order, and then you can see how blue beam would fit in there, just like
That's
just
why I
a
believe the
moving
supernatural
piece.
version of it, like the aspect of it. I know it sounds crazy, but again, you got these elites that are out in the woods chanting and doing rituals, and it's like, what are they doing if not summoning
Yeah, I was gonna
spirits
say
and
if they're
demons
not out
and
there creating a plan or doing something for a reason, like that would be
supernatural
pretty
aspects
fucking crazy that you're
are in
just
this
out there
so deep, and
running
it's.
around your underwear, fucking
But I mean,
chanting at something.
if you look at religious doctrine, okay, like 90% of the Bible itself basically outlines everything we're going into, Revelation alone. But then you can go back and you find
Well, I was gonna say
early
the only part with
Egyptian.
that is like when you don't really have a time, it's easy for people to substitute wherever. So like when Trump came in, he was the Antichrist. When Obama came in, he was the Antichrist.
But it's the thing,
When
it's always
when
a
Biden
human
slips in, he's the Antichrist. And it's like, all
living
right, so
being.
whatever side wants to use it, they can. So I mean, again, you're not going to really know who the Antichrist is in the beginning.
But here's the thing.
So
If you were to create a conspiracy that was supposed to take over the entire world for, I mean, again, we just looked at that back in the 1800s. This has been going on even further than that. We can look
yeah,
back to the time of Christ. Who could put something together like this and would greatly benefit from it? In my opinion, theoretically, I don't think it would be the land of the living. I think again, the spiritual side of the world would have more. They're eternal. They would have more
I don't
time
know,
to
man. I mean,
influence
we've come into
this.
some things too. I think that, I think that they were able to move a conscious into maybe a new body
See, and the
because
Watchers in Genesis goes into
yeah, I was
this
gonna say
soul consuming.
I was gonna say if you're thinking about it on a level of like, how the fuck can they keep carrying this out? Which is kind of one of my questions. You'd either have to have a very faithful and loyal new generations of kids and grandchildren and great grandchildren that are all willing to do this plan for you, or
A greater manipulation
a
system.
greater manipulation, maybe even an extraterrestrial race, maybe lizard people that live longer, maybe moving your conscious into new bodies so that you're always here on this plane working out this same plan yourself and just a new person. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to look at it, but there has to be something, because it would either be like you got the most loyal family, which they do convince those people
Well,
of.
you know what's I don't know if you looked into this, but this is terrifying in my opinion. If you look back at Egyptian again, where religious doctrine touches heavy on this blue beam and this world order and conspiracy. Um, Many of you may or may not know who Osiris was, and it said that Osiris, which there's also belief that Jesus and Osiris were the same person.
Yeah,
And
they have the
it
pretty much
said
same story.
Osiris would, when he returned, that Isis would announce this. And if you remember, not too long ago, we had well, I mean, I believe it's still, I don't know, is ISIS still an active terrorist group?
Was Horus Osiris's dad?
No, Osiris was Horus's child, or yeah, it was his father.
Yeah, because
Horus's father was Osiris.
Yeah, because I mean, their stories, man, to pretty much all the deities is like, I mean, everybody's saying the same thing.
What I'm getting at is the fact that there's a terrorist group that rises. It's called ISIS. Osiris Jesus, if you will, depending on what you believe. His rise would be, it would be announced through the rise of ISIS. She would announce it, which then we have a terrorist group like this. And now we're moving into this. We've seen, I don't know how many phenomenal events since then. It's scary when you look at it. And this has been going on since the creation, since Egypt. And I know to anyone with a free mind out there is thinking, well, we're not that old as far as a species. We're fairly young species. And but I'm saying, to put something like this together since the beginning time, it's almost like the original beings of Earth would have had to have sat down with a higher conscience and said,
I was gonna say our timeline as a species also keeps getting pushed back. So I mean,
yeah, it keeps jumping.
We might be a lot older than we think, but either way, yeah, I would agree. Like there has to be, I mean, and again, that's why I always thought, why wouldn't, a God or the one, if you only believe in one God, or even an extraterrestrial race come down and like stop this from being like really carried out to this long.
If they could travel, let's hypothetically, let's say an ET was to come to Earth. Okay, these people would have the technology to travel from one planet to another, but we'd have to think that whether they're the same species or not, they would have went through the exact same struggles. They would know the end game of where our species lands.
Yeah, and maybe that is part of how you actually get to be a type 1, is if you make it through this trial.
If they intervene, there would be a time they would know. It's like, okay, this is what we went through, so we know.
Or if they didn't intervene, if they just let it play out, you either deserve to move on because you overcame it, or you don't as a species. Like right now, I don't know that we do deserve to be universal travelers, and because we're not there yet.
I believe with
we're not there yet. We haven't got past the point of control and war and greed. And
yes, as we say, with our spiritual problem, with our inability to cooperate with one another, with our government.
So maybe that is all part of it. I would agree. Maybe there is something to that. Maybe there's a part that we haven't quite earned that part in the cosmos yet.
Well, we can't seem to get it together here on Earth. And with modern technology taking off, and then our own lack of control, we're moving away from self-control. We're too reliant.
And this is kind of pushing us in the direction even farther. So
yeah, I mean, we're barely able to. I mean, you wake up in the morning, and the first thing is what? Coffee, television, and the cellular device.
Wake up in the morning line.
But yeah,
the sunlight
right
hits
off the beginning.
my eyes.
Back in the day, it was coffee in the paper out on the deck. You'd be sipping your coffee, reading your newspaper.
Yeah, it's definitely a different world now.
It is, and it's again though,
I mean, some still do that.
Isolation is basically what they're leading us to. I mean, we're basically robots before we're robots now, and it's.
Yeah, they definitely have the programming, but again, that MK Ultra, those mind control techniques they've been working on, the way that they use propaganda and media, I mean, they're good at it, because we definitely fall in line. I mean, as soon as, and one thing that I thought was the biggest probably example of this, and everybody that believed, okay, so the pandemic came, and they see that you have the death toll on CNN right up in the corner. I'm like, how fucked up is that you just are going to sit there and tally every time somebody supposedly dies, so that it just like continuously is in people's face.
It's a fear tactic.
However, and then like my dad's like, they're just trying to give information. I'm like, really? Because I don't see how many kids go missing up in a corner of a TV every day.
And
we have, more than a pandemic that happens every single year with kids going missing and nobody talks about it. No news channels, no media, no propaganda, no tally mark up in the corner on CNN. So it's like, they're only showing what they want you to
And on
be.
top of that, that's barely discussed.
Yeah,
Keep in mind.
it's a horrible thing.
That's a quick mention. Hey, someone's missing.
Yeah,
that's it.
It's a horrible thing because it's way out of control, and it's
Pandemic
even
pops
doubled.
up, though, and
It doubled in 2016 to 2020, which was.
I think that was my biggest problem with the pandemic.
Crazy.
With as extreme as they made it sound. I mean, with as extreme as they made it sound, you have to almost think that, like, if it was that bad, wouldn't we have lost almost like 2/3 of our population? Theoretically, if it was as bad as they
did come out and say those are the numbers they projected. When that's a fear tactic because it's like you're just
projected these numbers were broke.
Yeah,
they were in the red zone, and anybody that came in, all of a sudden they had a problem with a certain situation.
Well, I think we hear that more and more now that all these people that came in, it's COVID. There was all kinds of other
part of the pandemic.
Yeah, there was all kinds of other things, but nope, it's COVID. They got you.
Everything. I mean, you would have came in there for.
We won't get too much into that though on this one because
we don't want to piss people off.
Well, we don't want to get canceled. Once you bring that word in there, we'll at least not taken off. We won't ever be canceled. You can find us somewhere, but we don't want to be taken off of the easiest places.
Radio if we have to.
Yeah, we just want to be taken off the easiest places to find us, but we won't mention the ones that are censoring because then they'll censor us for that too.
Censor us for seeing.
Yeah. But anyway, let's go on to step 2. And the step 2 goes more into the gigantic space show, quote unquote, is kind of what somebody had called it. I don't know if that was Serge's quote or not, but
I believe that was in someone's research after.
Yeah, because it was called the gigantic space show, and that's where dimensional holographic laser projections will be beamed all over the planet. The projections will take the shape of whatever deity is predominant to you and will speak in languages of all the tongues, and those gods will merge to make the Antichrist. And again, that's the thing is people got to understand is that, and again, I see why people would say, oh, when Obama, and if you were a Republican, you're like, oh, he's the Antichrist. First of all, you're not going to know who the Antichrist is. Otherwise, it really wouldn't be that good of an Antichrist. If it came out,
this person will be unseen.
Yeah, it's going to be like if they came down and were like, "Hey, I'm the Antichrist." Obviously, you wouldn't follow them. So
that's.
This projection or this thing leads into. I think that it's going to be it's not going to be like, hey, it's just projected in the sky. You hear it all of a sudden. It's going to be that easy and it's going to be noticeable. It's going to be very confusing. I think it's going to be a huge struggle for mankind.
Multiple projections in multiple areas, depending on the religion that's in that area.
But even listening to voices inside you, like if you've never heard something inside you, like kind of pushing you in a direction, like I've never heard the actual voice be like, hey, Jake, do this. But there's been things that like urge me in a direction. So if I heard a voice come from my soul or what I thought was my soul, it'd be fucking confusing. It'd be like, who the fuck is saying that?
And this is what I'm saying. I think that it'll be several different images, and then it will be psychotronic, that they more or less use a frequency that's giving the same message, and then your mind perceives it.
Yeah, well, the way perception is everything.
So that they can give it in every language, and then that frequency goes out, and you hear the message, but every language will hear that same exact message, which
in their language, yeah. And the thing is, like, I find that it's going to be kind of hard to do, but I also know that. You have all this technology, 5G towers, you have everything around you. The perception is everything. They know that. So if they can get you to perceive anything, it changes the reality that we live in. And that's just like if you do the double slit experiment, the particles that were observed by a conscious had changed. And then when they weren't, they went back to a different way. So perception, I think we can come to the conclusion on this very crazy universe and existence or reality that we don't know, this simulation, this whatever. Perception changes everything. So they know that that's the main way that this is going to work. So
we can't stress this enough. If this event were to take place, remember that one of the main agendas in this is to turn us against each other. Because you see this a lot with the rioting, the looting, with the chaos that's ensuing in America. Try to stick together, people. Try to see past these guys' agenda. Do not give into it. If we start,
I would say that we need to start establishing that before this even has a chance to take.
If they establish
yeah.
martial law, we lose everything.
Well, yeah, martial law, then it's just kind of more of a control way to take us down that road. But before that, I mean, like, even with a lot of these, when people do, protests and everything else, like, you got to watch for the details, pay attention to what's going on around you. Like, there's people catching cops putting these bricks out, and things like that, because they know if people gather, all of a sudden tension will get high and then people do stupid things. But if we all keep each other in check, I think Canada did a good job at it. I didn't hear of a lot of violence except for the horse that trampled that person, but that was pretty brutal. Did you see that?
I did not see that.
It was horrible. But if you keep each other in check and be like, hey, we can't do this the way they want us to do this, is get out of control so that they can micromanage us and then police us. If we do it right, Canada was, their poverty went down. They were feeding the homeless while they were in the city. They were cleaning up the streets. They were doing everything else. It's like, man, if that's the way to do it, that's the way to do it. That's how you got to do it. And then you got to show the rest of the people.
Yeah,
that's how it's done.
In a positive direction. Lead with love on that.
For sure. And that'll help. And that is true, because this is going to be a major part in this, is that they basically use us to go against one another. So it's easier for them to inflict law enforcement and do whatever.
That's the thing about this, them trying to separate us and put us, keep us antisocial, is by the time we get in these groups, the reality is you're so riled up is just because you're excited to see people again. You're excited to come back together and join with.
Oh, we saw that after the pandemic too.
And that's the problem. And then it's like, oh, we're rallying. And the reality is you're not just rallying for the cause. You're like, oh my God, I got a chance to commingle with people again. Do you guys remember when we used to do that in person?
Yeah. Actually, and I mean, if you see that, it's like, if you haven't been out with like your old friends in a long time, and you get to yapping and laughing, all of a sudden you're doing shots. You guys are out on the dance floor, getting wild, having fun. I mean, you can see how fast it can increase that's the thing. Like, even when you haven't seen people in a while, even after the pandemic, people are like, man, I just love going out to dinner again.
Right.
So think of on another level when it's like, you're really like,
you can't go.
Yeah. You can't go outside and you can't do anything. And then you do get to these groups and whatever else.
Outside, they're like, oh, where's my Ray-Bans?
Yeah.
That's basically what it was. Nobody was feeling it. They hadn't seen the sunlight. And how long, you little vampires?
And so then let's go into step 3. And then basically step 3 is going to be that little voice I told you. From what I understand, from what was described from many people, is that it'll basically give a voice inside you that'll sound like it's coming from you. So like in your head or from your soul, or, a directive from God speaking through you. So that part is kind of scary to me, because that part would be confusing as hell. Like, what the fuck is saying that?
Telepathic electronic two-way communication, as well. There's a supernatural aspect through it, speaking to them through telepathy projected into the head of each person individually using extremely low frequency radio waves, which, if you look into the water study, I don't have the guy's name up right now, that's entirely possible to project.
Well, all
sound
this
through
really
water.
is possible. It's just
100%.
like, so one of the things they were talking about, another, and I don't remember, you'll have to pound and search this, but they were talking about how if this blue beam was to come into effect in the New World Order, and I was like, well, if you didn't believe the voice inside you and whatever else, and you went against it and you started these rebellion groups and whatever else, and then you kind of went off grid, I mean, you could kind of fight it. And then it was said that all these animals are going to start to be chipped, and they were going to chip every fish, bird, animal that is on this earth. That way,
the way to control it one way or another.
That's what I was thinking. I'm like, man, that'd be a hard feat. But over time, they're already trying to do it with agriculture. They're wiping out all of your food, and it's genetically modified.
This is what I was talking about with overpopulation.
So it's patented, and you can grow it, and they can stop it. They can, you don't eat unless they say so. But then they were talking about putting all these chips in animals so that you can't go hunt. You can't do your shit on yourself without them knowing that these animals are disappearing.
Hell, you'll need a license to bird watch.
And I was like, Jesus Christ, man,
you've
no
seen,
offense to anybody, but
we've seen a lot of development in places like Iowa, which is an agricultural state. They're wiping out agriculture just to.
Well, I was going to say
stop
there's farmers
development.
that are coming out now saying that they told me that they'll pay me if I wipe all my crops out because they're
And
really
they're,
trying to
and they're
restart.
biting into this, and it makes
Yeah.
no sense.
Well, it's because they're getting paid and they're getting paid a lot more than they would selling it. And they're like, hey, I'm just letting you know.
They're not looking at the longevity of it.
No, but I do appreciate at least them saying, hey, this is what's happening, because at least that we know that it's happening. Now
that
that
are still fighting the good fight.
yeah, but I mean the one part is they're going to have to step up and maybe not take the money from the government in order to destroy crops, which I'm thinking like that already makes no sense if you're looking at it at the point of feeding poverty and whatever else. But what they want to do is destroy the natural crop and only make it possible for genetically modified crop. And that's why all those, they were doing it in South America. All those seeds for these things are all genetically modified and they're all patent. So they're all ownership. And that to me is just the beginning and the tip of the iceberg. But I mean, look at the health industry. They're trying to do everything too. I mean, like
that just came to mind too.
They're basically trying to control the whole entire health industry from top to bottom to where, you can't survive unless you have these pills every month and whatever else. It's not about a fix. It's about
healthcare here is.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, I mean, in America, it's really bad. And they were talking about that on the State of the Union. They're like, we should be bringing these prices of pharmaceuticals down. I'm like,
I mean, look at
fucking
Canada.
saying that for 50 years.
Yeah, I mean, look, Canada, isn't it entirely free up there? I mean, they take care of their own citizens.
Well, and then even on their pharmaceuticals, like in a lot of people go to Canada and bring them back and sell them for a cheaper price. They're different named.
I mean, here it's outrageous.
Yeah, they're different named, but they're the same thing, generic version of or whatever. But
get a hold of unless it's over the counter, and
but they've been talking about lowering those prices for 50 years. I'm like, yeah, who's actually going to do it? Because you guys keep saying it, but you're not putting any sanctions or whatever on these pharmaceuticals. You're letting them go rogue. I mean, even like you see like the opiate crisis, whatever. This opiate crisis got out of control where people were dying. You didn't hear much about that. But then the person that's leading the DEA on this whole thing, task force, all of a sudden leaves his jobs and becomes a CEO of one of these pharmaceuticals. It's like
control methods. This all fits into what we're talking about. In case you think we're getting off topic.
It's all really going. That's the thing is, if you look into a lot of, like I said, if you just look into the domination of, go back to the Rockefeller Foundation. When the Rockefeller, one of the richest guys on paper in the world coming to America, whatever else, was Standard Oil. After that, he set up the foundation that literally took over all the education, and what was deemed okay and the doctrine that they could teach that to the public school was what was laid out. That's when they changed the timeline, changed your perception of what our existence is. What information they gave you is what you get to know. And that's the same. And people are like, oh, you got to trust the science on, again, the pandemic. Okay, the science is the same industry. It's being controlled by all the people that are running all the pharmaceuticals, all the health, all of the research centers, all of the colleges, which were already ran by the Rockefellers. You start getting into it. It's like they're all merging to a control system to where the science you get is only the science they want you to have.
It's controlled information.
Yeah. Look at the patent industry. The patents of hydrogen cars and electric cars way back, all this other stuff, these people all died. All those patents were destroyed or kept secret or bought over and then hidden. It's like, you got to look at the big picture of how this is being played out. Like if you look at anything working towards one world government or the elites running everything,
that's like your news.
You can seriously
the same family.
See how this plays out. You can see how this has already been being played out.
Yeah, it's like your news is all given from the same corporation. If you backtrack it to the top of the pyramid, every news, it doesn't matter who you watch, CNN, Fox.
Well, I was going to say
it's all the same corporation.
In like 88,
so you're getting the same news.
I was going to say in 88 there was 50 that owned all those media sources.
Now it's gone.
It's 5 to what they say, and I think 2 of them own. I don't know. But if you look back and you actually follow it, you pound search that for yourself, do some homework. But the media went from 50 on paper to what we, easily could see to 5. And then they're not even trying to hide it anymore. It's like, okay, well, if you have 5 people pretty much determining what kind of information you get, it's only going to be either one way Republican, and then it's still not going to be good information, or it's going to be just slightly altered to where it's for the Democratic liberal side, and it's going to be the same information. Like it's just altered to one direction. And then really that just creates the divide and the fight between the Democrat and the Republican. But it's all the same shit. They all carry out the same agendas, the wars, the oil industry, the pharmaceutical industry, the Wall Street banking industry, all of it is always carried out. So just mind that when you go and want to fight with your fellow, person about politics and whatever else, all of your leaders in those, Republican or Democrat have carried out the same shit
from the, the more public version of what they provide you, like, what was it like? Was that 2 years ago? They came out with the fake news campaign, right around this time that all this is breaking down. Everyone was getting their news from traditional methods, but some of us were getting it from some of these others, which provided really good information of stuff they don't tell us on the networks. And
the fake news, that shit and the one thing I hate right now is the misinformation, because it's like information is information. It's only or wrong information if you go and look it up and it's wrong and like you do some more research. But misinformation, it's just information. So if we're telling you, or if somebody tells you, hey, this pharmaceutical company is in 2,700 lawsuits currently that are worth billions of dollars, and they're the same company that is giving you this and current, I'm not going to go into that, but it's like, okay, well, that's not right. And they've already been in tons of lawsuits, and they're already not a trusted company, and they've already tried to buy our politicians, and they shot this through. Like, that's not misinformation. You can go look that up. You can go find that.
Just jumping on that. I think,
and even the fact check thing. That Facebook got in trouble because they weren't even fact checking. They were just only doing their opinion. That was fact to them. And then they were saying, yeah, we shouldn't have called it fact checking. Well, that's the same as anybody can do. You don't have to rely on anybody to do it. You can go do it for yourself. And then when you go and look at these things that are uncomfortable topics sometimes and quote unquote misinformation, you go and look, and it's uncomfortable to find that, wait a second, this isn't necessarily misinformation. There's some real truths in here.
I do that commonly though. I'll hear something and I see that it's got the popular vote and I start talking about it, and then someone has to school me real quick, and you're like, I should have looked back at that, because honestly,
and that's the thing, is
ourselves more than anything.
When you're listening or trusting the CDC or your government or Pfizer or Moderna or whatever the fuck oil company that you want to believe that they're out there, cleaning up baby seals and no, they fucking made the mess, and then they had to go out and clean it up, and then they
use our money to do it.
They've killed these other people, have killed tons of people with bad drugs, and FDA approving it pre-hand when they shouldn't have. Again, now it's an emergency, so we can push it through its actual process when it has to actually go through trials of years to be approved. This is an emergency. Boom, push through. That's not right. That's wrong. I don't care who you are. And you can say, oh, people are dying. Well, a lot more are going to have a lot more problems when you push shit through without proper trials and education on it. So it's wrong, but we do it all the time. When it's not, this current situation isn't the first time. All of our food in America, we can go back to our fast food. All of our FDA approves this shit. In other countries, they won't even allow it. So it's like, okay, so who's right? Well, I would have guessed the country that's like, hey, America's FDA allows them to have this in their fast food. We will not. I'm going to go with the person we will not, because they're like, that's just too crazy
for a healthier environment.
Yeah. And so,
less chaos.
It happens all the time in every industry, mind you. So it's like when people are like, oh, I trust them. Well, I'm sorry for you, because you should really do more homework, because if you look at all of our industries and everything else, we don't have a good track record. Our government alone, Agent Orange, Tuskegee experiments, those are all proven to be true. Those are all things that we did to our own people, our own military, for crying out loud. So it's like, now we're just going to say, hey, no questions asked. We'll just do whatever you say.
That goes into our freedom, our freedoms. We have so much freedom, and we have our own right to our opinion. And what you're basically getting at, it's our pride that binds us, is what it really is.
And it's like, and it is. And that's the thing, is like, I would love to be that confident in the group that's supposed to be protecting me and carrying out my day-to-day stuff that I shouldn't have to worry about, which is, our law enforcement, the way that we're handled, our military, our, FDA are approving of things, but I don't trust them.
Well, that's the thing, and this is something I've commonly pondered. Let's hypothetically say that our military turns on us one day, okay, and then we become, they turn on us and they try to enforce all these politics on us in a one world government, in a dictatorship in America. You know what's sad is it seems like there's an agenda to push the people and the policing apart. Whereas if
there's a lot of good police,
if our military was to turn against us, in reality, not only our people but our police system, that is our last defense. Unless our National Guard separates from the military and decides to take our side on it, but we have to question a lot of that because there's a lot of agendas that try to turn us against our police departments.
I would say I would agree, but I see that playing out in a direction of, if they really needed the military to like, hey, we got to start, or enforce martial law, whatever, we have to have you do this. They will take their orders in the beginning, but then there's going to be a time where the realization like, oh shit, we're doing this to our own families. Like these are our people. And then when that realization hits, they're going to have a substitution. And they do. So if you look at Serco, I think, pound search that, it's a hired military, and it'll be third world, won't be from here, but this Serco has like 2.1 million people that you can hire as a personal military, and they will have to substitute ours or somebody's. I mean, like if it depends on if, the New World Order, how this really breaks down. I think if you capture America first,
they wouldn't use our military because
in the beginning they
wouldn't do their job. They're not going to turn guns.
Yeah, I know, and that's what I said in the very beginning. They'll take their orders because we've already seen it. We've already seen when they get the National Guard involved in protests, they come and they try to flex some power and beat some people with some sticks. They'll do it in the beginning, and then they'll realize like, okay, this is going too far. Now these people are really just fighting for their rights.
Yeah.
And then they're going to have to switch. They're going to have to switch roles.
That's basically what it is. It's a control method. They turn them again. They turn.
Well, I mean, we've seen that already
against them, and
we've already seen that. Like people, once they give a little bit of power to somebody and like, here, you can beat these people up. Like all of a sudden it goes too far, and they're whipping people for and
they
holding the sign.
They abuse it, and then they come out later and they want to explain to you. We see what it is that we were a part of. We see what they were trying to pull off. And then at that point, it's too late. The people are like, well, it's going to take me a couple months to get over this. There's the ranting, the raving. They got to yelp the hell out of you before you can be forgiven. And it
also creates that divide because then, you're putting up flags with the blue line. And then everybody else is like, oh, fuck cops. And then it's like, well, no, that's all people's brothers and both sides, brothers, mothers,
it's all politics,
fathers
that you're not seeing.
What they created that divide now they slid one between just average civilians and police, and we need police. So don't get me wrong, I love police because if we didn't, we'd have all anarchy and chaos, and we can't have that. But that's we also can't have police brutality where they're just doing whatever they want and beating the shit out of people for holding a sign. So it's got to be some kind of middle ground, which we'll have to meet.
That's what I'm saying. We're looking at, the people being separated. We're looking at the walls that they're building, but we're never looking at the masons that are building the damn wall. All right. So, let's not look back and forth so much as the people of the politics that are putting those walls in place and then barking orders on both sides. And we need to realize.
Yeah, and then sliding some bricks in the street so that it creates more chaos.
That's what I'm saying. We need to be looking more towards the masons that are creating the problem.
And I mean, as far as it sounds like it's getting off topic, because every once in a while you think back like, all right, where are we at? Blue Beam, but this is really all part of it. This is all part of it.
We'll have to keep reminding you. That's
but so step 4, which is the final step, which actually breaks down into a few parts that I had found. But let's say step 4, part 1 is make humans think an attack from aliens is going to happen in every major city. And that was what I originally learned Blue Beam as the staged alien attack, but now I think it might even work better if you did a staged alien like intervention because you'd follow them more. But either way, I think their plan is going to be kind of like, to me, I think, especially when there's people like me and everybody, Gordo and everybody talking about it, this plan is going to have little possible outs at any moment. They're going to have to change directives because it's going to have altercations that can happen within a split second.
They will create the chaos. And this is what I'm trying to tell you. If you see this chaos kicking up in your city, in your area, avoid it. Go out there and defuse it if you can. do the best you can to keep the people united and keep this from happening. Because he's right. They're gonna light this fuse, and it's gonna burn a couple different ways.
Yeah, and I think that they might even change directives. Like you said, they could change it from an alien attack to an alien intervention to like. So we're like, hey, I think the people will more follow if they come peaceful.
Maybe even an invasion from another country might be staged.
Yeah,
we don't really.
I was
know.
gonna say you could actually project nukes that we blew these nukes up in the air, and like people like,
and they've
oh,
tried
shit.
that too. They've tried that. It's like, oh, is so and so is targeting us with nukes, and we don't know. We just have to take their word because
That's like
how
what
it
I
is.
said. What I said on that last Thursday. Like all of a sudden was heard Putin mentioned nukes, and I was like, oh fuck, here we go. But then again, it's like
It goes back to what was it, Hawaii?
how's that all not planned?
Wasn't it Hawaii? They got the false nuke
From North Korea.
I don't remember who it was. An alarm went off. They thought they were going to be nuked. There wasn't there
I think that was
pandemonium over there.
I think that was North Korea, but they do this shit a lot.
That's what I'm saying. These things are
they do it a lot.
Yourself, yeah. Is it an accident? Because sometimes they're like, oh, we accidentally did this or this came up, and I don't believe that.
It gets to a point where it's like, fuck, they use this playbook over and over and over and over and over and over. What if it works? I guess why
their contingencies have contingencies. It's
yeah,
out of control.
So then like, as far as like Christians and whatever else, they'll make it think that the rapture is actually happening. So it'll, I mean, when they talks about in Revelations, 7-headed monster comes from the sea and whatever else. I mean, we might actually fucking witness that.
That's how long this has been being planned out, since the days of Christ and longer and further back. I mean, that is miraculous that they've put this together for that long.
And then, again, there was in the part 3 there, it talked about the mixture of electronic and supernatural forces, allowing supernatural forces to travel through fiber optics, coax, and power and telephone lines. That part's also scary to me because I don't know where they're actually saying with that.
There's that greater connection you were just talking about.
Well, I mean, like
higher mind.
Yeah, and I was like, I can see the electronics and whatever else sending through there to kind of create the whatever voice, whatever. But the supernatural forces kind of bothers me because it's like if we're talking about like, CERN, and then you open these portals and then you're using our current technology of fiber optics and coax and power lines, which we have everywhere. And then you're sending these actual demons or whatever else through it, like to cause chaos. Like I could see where if you did that and it was a true supernatural and it was like torturing people.
Well, for that, let's go a couple different ways. For us, the greater connection, we could go back to Genesis and the Watchers with soul exchanging or whatever, but through the phones and the technology, you said demons, that could be shutting things down, global hacking.
Well, I was gonna say even just like torturing people in their homes to cause that chaos.
And they do this.
And that's the thing is like, I mean, that's where it comes down to like there wouldn't even need to be certain things in the sky. Like if you were doing that kind of shit and people said, if you can make all that stop, I'll follow you anywhere. Like
if you look at the psychotronic, what is it? The psychotronic weaponry, weaponization, they talk about gang stalking and these things. And, if you look at your Facebook one day and you see that you're being hacked and someone's on there putting messages, that's the same as coming home to your door wide open and everything in your house being tossed. You're going to lose that sense of security, and you're going to go out, you're going to start to be paranoid. And if it continues, like you said,
again, I think if you lose the sense of security, like you said, it would be an easy, like, hey man, just go with the one world order. And you'd be like, all right,
this
fuck
is the
it.
thing. They separate us as families. And that's really what you're seeing, is because you go to your family and you tell them that and they're like, oh, it's okay. And then they think you're paranoid. And then eventually you end up becoming paranoid because nobody wants to hear you out. And they single out certain individuals. So that's
going to say that's, and sometimes I get anxiety, like when I'm looking at a certain topic and then you go really far down that rabbit hole and you're just like,
it scares you.
It's like, man, these possibilities aren't that far from reality though. Like even if even some of the conspiracies, which usually end up being proven right, you just got to give them, 20 years, whatever. But the thing is, like when you see something that's so disturbing, like some of this, the MK Ultra, the shit that they would do to fracture a mind, to bury like these signals or whatever in this fractured area of the mind, like, and like some of the stories that may or may not be true, but if they are, it's like, God damn.
And that's why many of you are here today, is to get an answer. And whether you're scared or you think it's part of the problem,
I've heard some of these stories and I'm like, I don't know if I believe it completely, but I do believe the possibility is there. And so even that to me is like, if humans are willing to do that, we suck ass. Cause it's like, man, some of the shit they would take these kids and like basically the one story that, and sex trafficking is that we know happens. That's horrible. We do that for money. Humans do that for money. So that again,
Things that we do to one another.
yeah,
It's
things that
just,
we do
it's
to
an
one another
atrocity.
in general. But then, in the MK Ultra, the one it talked about, they would put these kids in a room for like weeks on end by themselves with
Okay,
nothing.
yes. Now I know what you're talking about.
And
You're
then
telling me about this.
they would wait for them and to get really lonely and cry basically just because they had nobody, and they'd give them a puppy or whatever. And this was a story that was said, and I can't say whether it happened in the United States or not, but anyway, this was part of like an MK Ultra project, a mind controlling project. And then basically when they adapted to this puppy, and that was like their best friend or their only thing that they gave love to, because love is the easiest thing to like shatter something. They'd come in and cut that puppy's head off right in front of them. And so then when it'd break them down to nothing. Basically, that was the last thing that they had left to love, and he killed it in front of them.
And I know that's this is a little far off from
It's dark,
killing the
but I'm
puppy.
just saying this is the type of shit, these stories, and then that creates this fracture in your mind, and then they bury whatever kind of secret they want later, or a secret agent or a secret word that brings out a time, and they'll program it in that fracture. So that's
Seeing
kind of
that
how they
today,
explained
though.
it.
We're seeing that today with families now. We're seeing you notice how agendas tend to pop up on your social feeds, and it tends to push mothers and fathers away. I mean, compare the number of children born to marriages these days, and you'll find that that's quite common. You've got a father or a mother that's in a household, and then a social agenda comes up, and someone's, it basically makes you follow a certain genre where maybe the mother or father isn't living up to this expectation, which then separates the family. And who does this play the harshest on? It's the children. And it's basically, minus the killing the puppy.
Well, I
It's
mean,
basically the
well,
puppy
the
is the
kids are the
parent.
easiest to bury
Yes.
a fracture in,
And
and
they
then
tell you, if you want to corrupt them, if you want to hurt them, you hit them when they're young.
oh yeah.
And that's how they
Well, you
do
don't
it.
have time to build up your own defenses. You're just kind of
And
vulnerable to the world.
we're all into these social agendas, which are taking place.
And
This
basically,
is another part of Blue Beam that
I was going to
most
say,
people.
basically, this is that. I'll just wrap it up with that. But that was the part 4 of step 4 was to cause chaos so that you'll accept new world order, and you'll be desperate for it. And that pretty much leads into all that, because it's just like
You're seeing it.
once you destroy and put that fear into everybody, and everything's chaotic and natural disasters, whatever else, or flip the power back on, you're willing to just do whatever to have
Well,
things go back to normal. So
direct approach these days, because we keep talking about how they're trying to segregate and isolate. Is the direct approach is an indirect approach now. It's, hey, how you doing? Let's go to our separate rooms and we'll go from there. It's
yeah. Yeah. And then this Dr. uh Carol Rosin, and she counseled her. She was actually the assistant for von Braun, which we've talked about many times. He's the rocket guy, the V2 rocket. He was the scientist brought over on Project Paperclip from Germany after World War II. That led our NASA our program, and he had warned us many times. And then even she's been very outspoken. I don't know if she's alive yet or alive still or not, but she warned about the weaponization of space, and that Werner von Braun had said that in the final card, it will be the illusion of extraterrestrials that they use against mankind. And then he had claimed that we always had to have an enemy, and he had said communism. He was right. He said terrorism. He was right. He said meteorites, which kind of right so far. We've never had one to the point of, I think, complete chaos. But I mean, they've said, they've passed right by. They were within 50,000 miles from Earth, stuff like that. So they've kind of used it somewhat, but I don't know to what extent they might use it. But then he said the final card that will be played is extraterrestrials, an illusion of extraterrestrials.
and a lot of the conspiracies that I've looked into, the one that I've had the pleasure of being in the company of on this show, is they all tend to lead back to this blue beam. If you're looking at it, it all seems to lead up to this right here, this one world, this new world order.
I was going to say, the more I looked into blue beam, the more uncomfortable I got, because I was like, well, fuck everything that I've studied and everything that what I do on this show. Literally
leads
looks
to
like
the
that
top of
would
this.
be the final step. And being that this surge had said it back in 1994, when at the time of the things was saying were just, they sounded outlandish and crazy,
At the time.
now sound more plausible, especially after, just the pandemic, how easily that you can manipulate the public. It seems like, fuck, this
Well,
seems more legit than ever.
back when, if you remember, one way of delivering information was they would give information through like plays and such in theater, and they would because people weren't as educated back in like medieval times, or
Yeah.
they would put a play together, and that was like the news, where we still do that today in common society. So again, we could go back to, clearly someone had put this together and people just weren't paying attention to it, and Sergey Manis kind of put it together in a way people could understand. But like I was saying earlier, you go back to like the Wizard of Oz. Oz was basically this in a nutshell, that he was this guy that's portraying this giant, projection, but then you look behind the curtain, and it's this little guy in a robe that's just behind a computer screen, and that's really all he was. I mean, we're looking at the same
I was
situation.
going to say that. I mean, I think it'd be hard to keep this secret if they get to that point where somebody's got to control all that technology. So keeping that
Well, like
secret
you said,
is
the
going to be
Antichrist,
hard, but
we'll never know.
but it's not like it's not like they haven't done it before. They've kept huge secrets for a long time, periods of time. So you're not going to need much.
The thing we never asked ourselves, well, maybe some of us do, maybe some of us don't, but it kind of dawns on me that when Roswell happened, did we ever stop and question? We said it was an unidentified flying object. Did we question who was it unidentified to? The people, the government? Because for all we know, the government created this damn thing and put it out there to create their own conspiracies, because so far they've had us looking, they've Texas two-stepped us the whole way. They've got us looking left while they go right. And you notice every conspiracy you come across is a 50-50, like, oh, this is the information they hide, and then this is what has been presented to the people, and then it breaks down to even what they quote unquote hide. You end up with all the information, a bunch of it's redacted.
I was going to say a lot of it
just to keep you guessing.
A lot of it. Yeah. Well, I was going to say they count on, I know for sure, because some, like, if you believe one side or the other, and then it's like, well, either believe it or you don't. Well, that's not true either, because you can believe some of the things within it. So then they've even went to the extent of
We built our whole country around.
they'll
this
take
belief.
both sides and mix it together and give you little truths and whatever else, and completely lead you in the wrong direction to where it's completely muddy waters. So they use all kinds of tactics.
But mostly it's to keep us arguing back and forth while they have the truth.
Yeah.
And a lot of these conspiracies, you got to wonder, did they just create these to keep people guessing? And now that we look at it,
well, some of them maybe.
Public. Well, I mean, now everything's out in the public. It's not even a question. They don't even try to cover it up
the
anymore.
conspiracy part is hard when you say the word conspiracy. Did they create the conspiracy? Because to me, the conspiracy, the actual word is questioning the event that happened. So like when you say conspiracy, like it depends. If you're talking about the assassination of our president, that happened, he died. The conspiracy is who did it. Well, and the motivation behind it.
Yes.
Well, that's just, the conspiracy then is just you're asking questions and you're, going back to the place and, well, if we could, I mean, obviously they killed the patsy right away, but like you're trying to find out, you're trying to back channel all these things and reorganize that event to find the answers. But then, like, if you're talking UFOs, we don't really know. I mean, some people do, I guess, so that they've been abducted, but they could also have been abducted by us.
So then the Roswell thing came to mind, because I was watching the special on Bob Lazar, and he was talking about he was talking about the looking down the hangar when he was in 51 and seeing that we ourselves had crafts that we were
back engineering.
ones that we were engineering.
Oh yeah, well,
and it's
originally it was back engineering, and then I think we were making our own, which is the TR3B. Look that up. The thing's pretty dope.
So you got to stop and question.
That's ours.
Are we manufacturing our own alien invasions?
I think we are, because I think that's a thing that you have to look out too, because they were talking about this projector beam or protractor beam that can actually suck people up, that they've been working on for this blue beam. I also saw a document that briefly stated that. You can go look it up. That I wasn't going to bring in because I don't know. It just sounded crazy, but you never know. I mean, with the technology we have, it's possible. I'm guessing that it is possible they could figure out a way to manipulate gravity or the field around it and then suck somebody up into a ship or suck somebody up into the sky and you wouldn't see the ship.
And that goes back to what we were discussing with this
Well,
high
it's
mind.
yeah, I was gonna say,
higher mind.
but that makes it more believable if you're gonna try to pull this off. Like it would make you think like the good ones or the people that on the second coming that got sucked up were going to heaven or something, you know. But really, it's just them using technology to like portray this whole entire cinematic
Keep you guessing.
UFO, second coming, voice in your head, people getting sucked off the ground. Like that's going to be really
And you're
hard to
thinking-
deny.
In case you're thinking, like, how would that
Excuse me.
benefit them? It would basically be our politics telling us, "Oh, we got to do what we have to do so that we don't upset the alien race," and then they have our
Suck us
vote.
up into yeah.
Well,
Well,
then they have our sympathy and our vote, thinking, "Oh, we're looking out for the best interests of our race," while this quote unquote alien race is hiding out in the background, where in fact we've never seen them. We don't know where the hell they're at. So
I was going to say if you had all that going on, it would be very hard to deny it if you saw people getting sucked up into the sky.
with
He had a
Hollywood these days,
voice
no,
inside you.
okay, that. But if you were projecting it,
No, I meant they were actually talking about technology sucking people off the ground.
I'm saying though, if they could make these projections, it wouldn't even be hard to project people in the crowd.
Well, I
that
know,
are
but
being
then
also pulled up,
but
and then
then
you
you
start.
but see,
believing
then
it.
you go into the whole like school shootings. Who knows these people that got shot? And then it's like, oh, there wasn't even people that got shot. So then things like these little conspiracies within conspiracies start going on. But if it's somebody who's
Because
like,
of
that was
this.
my mom that got sucked up, and they actually took somebody and sucked her up, not a projection of, but they actually sucked a person up,
Yes,
then you could prove that people are missing.
and it's because of technology. Because I
it's-
can present a video. and then
But so
people
like
have to
again,
believe
it's they're looking at if they're doing this, if they're gonna do this, they're looking at every angle to make this the most believable thing they can. But I guarantee they'll fail in a lot of areas because they always do. And all their fucking false flag events, they fuck up a lot or leave clues. I don't know if it's purposely or not, but we're getting smarter and smarter, and we catch them every fucking time.
I this is why I believe a supernatural event or a supernatural side is against the human side. Because as far as I can see, one of our government's biggest things is they can't just come out and tell us everything. We know that much, okay? Because then they feel it puts people at danger and it puts people at risk. So I think you're right. I think they purposely drip feed this because let's face it, these events coming to fruition depend on our unity shattering. All right. Well, not only our country, as well as several other countries, that is a damn hard feat to pull off. Okay.
Yeah.
To shatter our unity, because where several countries might not agree with our ways and we might not agree with some of theirs, the one thing is we even have unity with these other countries. We agree with several of their aspects. They agree with several of ours, where we have our minor discrepancies and disagreements. We're always there for each other, and that's never going to stop. And every time a problem arises, we're just going to be there to fight with one another side by side, even harder. We're always going to join together.
Well, and that's the
on a
thing.
common
It's
cause.
like, and that's the part that I don't like is because if you go back to Ronald Reagan, and he had said, imagine, and he was one of the first ones that pretty much, I don't know if he was, maybe alluding to Blue Beam, but he had said, imagine if there was an extraterrestrial race, we would stop all wars on Earth to join together and unite and fight against something that we can't imagine.
At
So,
the same time, why would we have to?
but that's the thing is like him saying that, like that, all that says, like, I like the unity that you're saying, but that also plays into if we really believe there was a exterior force trying to take us over, that we would just adapt into this new world order even quicker because we'd want to fight together. And so it's like there's a lot of confusing parts.
And that's the thing that I'm baffled by that, because it's the truth. What you're saying is true. Like that would probably move the masses much quicker. But the fact is, it's these agendas that keep us separated. We don't need this, like this outsource to come down and unite us, because we're united, but we're too busy looking at these agendas.
Well, I think that they do that too on purpose. I think that they, keep us separated. Then they use certain things. 9/11, you saw the patriotism where all Americans all of a sudden wanted to come together for once and buying American products and whatever else. And we were all back to go to this war against, these bad terrorists. But it's like, if you look into a lot of that, unfortunately, and a lot of people don't want to hear it, there's definitely some things. I can't prove it, obviously, but you can go see it for yourself. There's a lot of unanswered questions that we had part to do with that.
And one thing we're finding,
they created that patriotism.
One thing we're finding. All right. So some of you might be asking, I don't know what most people's religious status is. Okay. Um, in the world that we're living in today, we see that religion is on a slow incline. Okay. It's going down, and people might be thinking, why? Why is this important in a world where religion is slowly being pushed out? Let me explain some things. Um, Many religious doctrines go on to tell you again about the Lord and spirits. Many people, I don't know what your belief is on these things, but through time, they've established a system to remove us from the supernatural world to where we no longer have communication with it. They have built a wall even into that world of communication. So now we have these chemicals in the air, we have fluoride in the water, we have several. Look at the back of any nutrients and of anything you buy
Yeah.
these days. There's calcium in almost every damn thing you
Well,
look at.
basically poison.
But yeah, so again, where back in the day it was very common to have your pineal gland open, and you might not know this, but if you open that damn thing, you can see spirits. As crazy as that sounds, you get healthy and you break through these walls, you can communicate with that supernatural side. So this is the importance of them breaking us away from religion, is to put a wall to the communication of us and the other side. Where back in, if
Well,
you
it
read your
appears that
Bible,
they've
it's
used
very
that.
important.
Well, I was going to say it appears that they've used that side for many things on their behalf.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. So we need, they talk about, good, bad, angels, demons, what have you. I don't want to
I
get too
think it's
much
more
into it.
information. It's just how you use it.
Yeah,
So
well,
it's
and that's
not
the
necessarily
thing.
good or bad, but you can
Some
talk
people
to this
want
other
us
side and
yes.
manipulate it and use it for bad or
Well,
good.
and the problem is the more we separate that, we empower them to go speak to these supernaturals, these spirits, these demons, what have you. And it's giving us a lack on us speaking to the good, the spirits, the angels, however you want to say, so that we can get their assistance to fight this war. And this is the reason that Blue Beam is separating us from the religious side, just in case anyone's wondering why, because you see a slow incline of it. We need more people that are educated in the back history as much as the history of what's going on today in our world.
Well, I think that's the hardest part, is that you don't have, it's that lost information that you don't, it's hard for a lot of people to put together the whole picture. So they go on what is told to be the oldest
said,
book
like,
and whatever else.
Organized religion, like
Yeah.
you said, it gets a bad rep.
Well,
But
it's
I mean,
it's very confusing because you want to believe in your God, and then these people
yes.
that say that they were chosen, which is you'd be the Pope and the Vatican, they're the ones out here fucking up the world.
I don't personally believe that Christ himself was a very religious individual.
I don't either.
I think there was a lot of pressure put on him.
Well,
to
first
be
of all,
the
I don't
Son
think
of
that
God,
if
and that was written before he was born. So you really got to question a lot.
I think
of
if
that.
he was to do that, it would have been a really dumb move to make a religion or a way, a certain organization or whatever you want to call it, to follow in your footsteps, because then it's going to break off based on humans doing their own thing and wanting power control. And now it's more like so confusing because I've even talked to other religious people that are like, I'm sorry, you're going to go to hell. I'm like, for why? And they're like, well, because you were baptized as a Catholic. I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. So you're going to say for me praising my God different than the way you praise your God would be the God taking you to hell? Like, I just,
and at the
that
same
doesn't
time,
even make any sense.
it really doesn't. And but again,
But people believe that.
this is why and I'm not pushing religion on you. Let's look at it more as a historical document that you want to look into. Read your Bible when it comes to these things, because not only will you see Blue Beam unfold inside of there and see that a lot of the events in the Bible have not happened yet and are still coming to fruition. You'll see that there are several accounts of people talking to the Lord, which is spirits, and how they talk about he came
I think there's
down
truths in Bible, by the way. I
Yeah.
don't, I wouldn't do what people say and, like take the Bible verbatim, because it's like, Jim Jones did that too. And a lot of people, you can manipulate the Bible as all day.
Definitely.
Or read it with just like, them putting these books together in the way they want. You have to cipher through it a little
A
bit.
grain of skepticism.
Yeah.
Keep an open
Yeah.
mind about
But
a
there
lot
is
of it.
true. I guarantee there's true stories in there, and there is, because the way that it's put together is too calculated.
It is. And again, we see this.
But it
repetitive
also
effect.
needs to be like looked at with a skeptical, logical mind, because you can't just believe every word.
you
I mean,
don't wanna just walk
if you
that
went
line.
verbatim, I mean, there's parts in there that are just, bury your seed in the belly of a whore. There's all kinds of weird shit. So I mean,
don't just dive in and be like, oh, we have to live our life on this. No,
Yeah.
you don't have. You're going to want to have your own idealism. You're going to want to stay. A free
but there is
thinker.
definitely things, and I think Revelations is one of them books. It's it's
Scary as
sometimes,
hell is what it is.
yeah, I was going to say, when you read it, it kind of is uncomfortable, but at the same time, I do think that there is hidden messages within it.
I think it's honestly, when you read
But
Revelation,
it
it's
is,
the 4 stages of life. And again,
it is
just
kind
saying
of
it,
strange,
is
though.
what we're
It does make
discussing.
you feel like, holy shit.
Well, again, though, we've seen these documents
But
appear
Genesis is
over
like
and
that.
over and
I
over.
was
And
gonna say
over
Genesis
again.
is like that too. In the beginning, you read it, you're like, God didn't give a, God was an asshole.
Well, you know what? Genesis is really,
But
we were just talking about the Book of Watchers.
Yeah.
Enoch.
yeah,
Genesis is the short, sweet version of the Book of Enoch. Hey, some things happened. Adam and Eve, Garden of Eden, souls were maybe. Or
yeah,
maybe
that
not
was,
eaten.
that obviously was a brushed over story because
They tucked
there's a
that
lot
under the
more in the
rug
creation
really
of
quick.
man than, you know, a guy being there and they take a rib out and make a
that's-
girl. Like,
Well, and
and we're all
that's the
inbred.
reason the Book of Watchers is very important, because the reality is Revelations almost doesn't make sense without the Book of Watchers, because Watchers talks about the interaction between mankind and spirits and how they have influenced our world massively and highly. And now we're sitting here looking at, as far back as, again, the 1800s with a document describing the same events with wars that are happening today.
Well, they've been using, but I think in the rituals and everything else, they've been using spirits for their agendas way longer than we can ever. Well, I mean, even cultures and civilizations did rituals to bring on spirits and information from the other side. So you have a lot of weird characters, Aleister Crowley, all these other people that have used the other side to, push them forward in this world, in this reality. But this one, I think they're going to use it to manipulate and whatever else, and we'll think that they're spirits. But we don't want to. We'll save some for another one. Not another Blue Beam, but another episode that might go farther down the road of maybe the rituals. That might be a good one that we do sometime soon.
Have you done a tie-in yet of all the religions and how they keep repeating story over?
No, I wanted to do that one. I was going to be deities or something of that nature. Actually, if you guys want something certain, the lost info podcast at gmail.com. Send us in, let us know. But we do want to do one of those.
That would be a really good
fairly
one,
soon. Yeah, I think that would be fun.
Between the Egyptians, the Christians, the Romans.
Well, I think that, I was going to say, I think that, I was going to say, even the Mayans, the Azteca, there's a lot of similarities that, and the fact that they all had the same structures all around the world, but yet they were never in contact with each other. There's a lot of questions and all that, which, again, the lost information, we have topics for days, but if the ones you guys want to hear, send in. Otherwise, we will see you on the next episode. I think we're going to wrap this one up. I think this one is TLI approved.
Definitely.
Because there's a lot to it and it's already been being played out. So it's approved on a possibility. Obviously, it's not proved that it's happened because it hasn't yet, but the possibility is there. The technology is there. So
what's your feedback? We want to hear it. Good, bad.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you guys have a theory on Blue Beam or whatever else, or way that you look at it that you might think is more possible or plausible, send in the lost info podcast at gmail.com. Let us know. This is more of a communication, or a global discussion is what we called it, but a conversation between everybody so that, everybody get involved, because obviously that's what's going to help us out in the long run, is that we all see this coming and talk about things coming and talk about our timeline till we can get to a point to where we're more on the same page.
Your opinion fuels this. It lets us know what direction we need to start heading. So
absolutely. Till the next time, our fellow seekers of knowledge, finders of info, this is the Lost Info Podcast, and I'm keeping you awake, Jake, and believing Steven, and we're out. Peace.